Bobby Robinson, just like the people in Atlanta, ripped them off. So even though they got a chance to do the Apollo, stay at the Hotel Teresa, all that stuff, when it came to money, they would say the royalties, well, you know, those suits you have on and those hotels and stuff. So they didn't get paid what they're supposed to get paid.
Hmm.
Gladys never wanted to go to Motown.
Oh, really?
But they did everything as a group, the four of them. They voted. So the best votes win.
Mm-hmm.
She thought that she would get lost. You had the Supremes, the Marvelettes, the Shirelles, all the female groups.
Mm-hmm.
So she thought that she was going to get lost in the sauce. So I did that. And I also worked for Metro Media, Channel 5. They had Black news there. So I had 2 different internships going. Again, I was sort of crazy with a lot of energy and I was doing a lot of things. And I tell people back in those days, I couldn't even touch a camera, you know, all the union rules.
What was it that made you decide to take the step to do this? And what's the single most important thing you learned writing the book?
Well, you know, I'm a journalist,
Yeah.
so I've written academic books. I've written over, 50 or 60 articles published. So, it's a process for me.
This was
But
different though, right?
it was different. Yeah, it was more and what made it even challenging because it was family.
Yeah.
I had to get it right. I
Your
was going.
heart. Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Dhyana Ziegler, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about this amazing book. I'm so excited about this, and I told you before we hit record, I just can't stand myself. I am such a big 70s rock fan, right? Like I listen to 70s on 7 on XM all the time, and I just love it. And I'm such a huge Gladys Knight and the Pips fan. I'm so excited about this. So thank you again for being here.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm excited and I love your enthusiasm and your energy. It's wonderful.
I'm so starstruck. I'm telling you, I'm so starstruck. So where were you born?
I was born in Harlem, New York, 1 block from the Apollo Theater.
Wow.
On 124th Street. So yes, I was born and raised in New York City. So I came up in this phenomenal business. My mother and my father. My mother worked in a hospital. My father worked in a factory. But my father was also the lead singer of the Morning Doves gospel quartet group.
Oh
So
my goodness.
on the radio on the weekends, I was still little. I'm the youngest out of all 3. So he was singing on the radio, and just being born, I knew we were in a musical family because my father sang. My mother loved music. My mother particularly loved jazz.
Yeah.
So my love for jazz, I mean, she was the Billie Holiday, Dakota Staten, Gloria Lynn. So I learned about all of these artists very young. I used to lay in my bed at night just listening to her playing her music and her friends. And then sometimes my parents, they'd probably call it child abuse now, but my parents would come home and they would wake us up to dance. Let's just dance together and put on those old 45s. And we would just dance and rock out to music and just have a good time. My father was also a 33-degree Mason. So the Masonics, they had a lot of dances. That was part of their
Mhm.
fundraising. So I went to my first dance at 7 years old
Oh,
because they
wow.
didn't leave me home. So again, I was out there dancing with my parents, and my mother used to laugh because he carried me for
Mhm.
many, many years, probably until I was too old to be carried. But I was a daddy's baby and he loved this
Mhm.
little girl. So he carried me around. I would always fall asleep. So that's sort of how I came up in New York. As a child, I went to Catholic school, but it's
Mhm.
a story as it relates to how I got to Catholic school because my mother, um, because I was the youngest and my mother was working and my father was working, my sister and brother, they're 4 or 5 years older than me.
Mhm.
I was too young, so they actually sent me to Florida, and it's a circle around of how I got back here. My mother, my father is from Quincy, Florida, which isn't too far from Tallahassee.
Mhm.
They sent me with my grandparents, which that was a whole other phenomenon because here I am now leaving New York City and actually going to the country. I mean, I tell people my only friends, I had a dog, and then they had all these fields of crops. So I would spend my days, in these fields and looking up at the sun. And my father, before he married my mother, had a daughter. So she was 6 years older than me.
Mhm.
And they didn't want to be bothered with you when you're little. I walked
Mhm.
too slow, everything like that. So I remember running behind her and again, just spending time a lot alone in those fields and looking at that corn and the watermelons and stuff like that. My grandmother actually worked in a tobacco barn. Now, again, here I am, another situation where they can't leave me home.
Mhm.
So she had to take me to work with her. Again, a New Yorker. I had no exposure, but I loved it because I'm a nature person.
Yeah.
And I believe that is because of that experience as a
Oh,
little
yeah.
of having to be in the country that gave me my love for nature. So they actually gave me a job picking up leaves in the barn. I was only maybe like 4 or 5 years old. So, the fast forward, my mother says, okay, no, it's time. You have to go and get my child. So they brought me back home. And for some reason, I was skipped twice in school. I should have been going to the second grade. When I got back to New York, I was going to the fourth grade.
Hmm.
So my mother took me to public school and she only had one day off of work. So it had to be done that day.
Mhm.
And they said two things: we can't get her registered today, and she's too small to be in the fourth grade. So my mother took me over to see Father Dugan to Catholic school. My sister and brother talked them into being Catholic by the time I got back home.
They didn't have the
And
same rules, right?
right,
Yeah.
so Father Dugan, she had to pay, she had to go and get another job.
Yeah.
But Father Dugan says, okay, we'll take her. My mother says, well, I'll go and get a second job to be able to pay for everything. And he says, well, she is still too small, but I'll tell you what, let's put her in the third. So they left. I contend I would have probably been okay either way, but
Mhm.
I ended up still one grade skipped ahead. And I went through um, Catholic school. And then from eighth grade, I went to Cathedral for
Mhm.
2 years. St. Patrick, no,
Mhm.
Cathedral's the big St. Patrick Church. Then my mother and father moved to New Jersey. We're now dealing with the same thing. I'm in my last 2 years of high school.
Mhm.
So they said, well, you're too late to register her in Catholic school because it was in the middle of the summer.
Mhm.
So now I had to go to public school. But then I was excited because now I'm in New Jersey. I can wear my own clothes.
No
You know,
uniform.
in fact, yeah, I was known as the girl from New York City. You know, my sister she went to fashion high school, so I was always her. My brother too. They both went to fashion industry. So here I am. I've been watching them in fashion, so I get a chance to dress. I get a chance to go to football and basketball games, and that was also exciting. And that's how I got through high school. And then my mother decided to move back to New York. So we moved back to New York. In between that time, however, which I guess it would tie into the book, but if you want me to continue with my story, I'll do that and we'll circle back.
Go right
So
ahead.
I went on, and by that time, my sister had met my brother. Was all the music stuff was, beginning to start to happen. I decided I did not want to go to college right away because, I was going to be, my sister and I were dancers.
Mhm.
So I was going to be in theater and dance. I decided I'd go to the School of Visual Arts. So I learned about film. So I went to
Mhm.
specialty schools. I went to music schools. I bought myself a guitar. I started writing songs and stuff like that. And that took up a period of time. By that time, again, my brother-in-law and sister, they were married and stuff. And then
Mhm.
I became the executive vice president for Patten and Guest Productions, which is my brother-in-law, William Guest and Edward Patten of the Pips.
Mhm.
I created disco bells. Disco bells were jewelry that you wore on your wrists and your ankles and stuff
Mhm.
to dance. And we put out a record, Put On Your Dancing Bells. My brother-in-law funded, if you can imagine, I'm 24, 25 years old, writing $100,000 proposal to a bank for a loan. Of course, I have their back, and I got 50,000 of it.
Mhm.
25 years old, like, so I ended up, we got salespeople, went to India, manufactured the bells, all of that stuff, came back. I was always creating something,
Mhm.
like you're saying, making something happen. I always made something happen because it started out with spirals, which was a boot accessory that became disco bells. Then
Mhm.
we made, this, again, the song. We had it in Cosmopolitan magazine, John Travolta and Saturday Night Fever. If you ever go back and look at that, when he comes in the disco, he's doing does like that. He's
Mhm.
wearing disco bells.
Wow.
So that was, one of my sister always talks about me in my mind, always inventing or trying to think of the next thing, which I am in the process of even doing that now. Trying to
I'll
think of
bet.
what the next thing is going to be. So I spent some time running that company and also writing. I had a number one disco song back in 75, Time Moves On by Strut. It
Mm.
was similar to Fly Robin Fly. If you listen to it, you'll probably know it. It was number one in record world.
Mm.
So I was producing music then. And by that time, there was a period of time after 37 years, Gladys Knight and the Pips starts to break up. So I jumped back into school. So now I'm at Baruch College where they're using disco bells in the School of Business as an example of new product marketing that I'm a student in, on financial aid. I can't let them know that I'm the creator of this project. I run into a journalism professor. I'd also had a period of time where I was a copywriter producer. I wrote for Schaefer Beer and McDonald's. In fact, if you know the DJ Vi Higginson was a big DJ in New York. She did a lot of my commercials, and Hubert Laws actually did some original music on the flute for me too. So,
Wow.
and Uncle Ben's Rice. So they played my Uncle Ben's Rice commercials for years in New York.
Mhm.
So I had that advertising, I had the writing, and all of that. And the journalism professor, I ran into her as a student because I used to change my clothes in the car and then go to the record shop. So I would have on tennis shoes and then I'd have on boots and looking like the record executive. And this Professor Bernstein, she found out that, she talked to me and found out I was a copyright and stuff like that. She said, you need to be a journalism major. So I was trying to get out of the School of Business anyway, because I didn't want to be discovered. So I hopped to the journalism. And that's where things took a whole other turn for me. I started writing for the newspaper right away. I worked all the way up to the managing editor. And I was also the news director for the radio station.
Wow.
And we were so into news. We used to spend the night in the newsroom making sure we get that paper, the reporter out every week. So then, that's how I got to CBS. I did my undergraduate degree in 3 years. I was a double major, journalism, music, with a minor in education. But I was running, so I was doing 18 to 21 credits and stuff. I wanted to get this over with so I can get back to the business. And things started going. So I had an internship for 2 years at CBS. I worked on not only the news, but I worked on some just production shows. So I did that. And I also worked for Metro Media, Channel 5. They had Black news there. So I had 2 different internships going. Again, I was sort of crazy with a lot of energy and I was doing a lot of things. And I tell people back in those days, I couldn't even touch a camera, all the union rules. So even though I was doing all this great news, if I was on the story and I wanted to go, I had to take the subway and meet the crew because I couldn't go in the car with them because it was against union rules. And New
Because
York,
you were an intern.
Huh?
Because you were an intern?
Yeah, because I was an intern.
Yeah.
So that was a problem, but that wasn't a problem for me. I just hopped the subway.
Figured out a way to make it work.
Yeah, go stand in that phone booth. There's a threat that there's going to be a bomb or something. I'm not thinking about, well, if that bomb happens, I'm going to blow up. I'm excited. I'm on that phone because I'm the tip. So it was a very, very exciting time. So by the time it came for graduation, I took all the journalism awards. I won 7 awards, including the Scripps Howard. And then they started coming after me for graduate school. I had no intentions on being Dr. Ziegler or anything like that. So I remember I decided to go on 2 because I said, well, if I'm only gone from New York a year or so for a master's program, not a problem. So I had Washington State, and then I had Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. That was number 3 in the country at that time for radio and television. So I decided to go there. I had 2 different assistantship offers walking in the door, but I decided I wanted to stay in radio and television. So I took the graduate teaching assistant, and where I've been a first in many things. So I was the first African-American graduate teaching assistant ever at the institution, female. So I went there. I started with 30 guys. And it's so funny because I graduated out of the master's program by myself. I left them behind. But walking into the radio and television, I ended up on the radio and immediately and walked into my own television show. And when I got to Carbondale, I was hearing all this news about these women being raped and nobody was talking about it. What is going on? So I decided to do a series, Rape is a Reality. And I did a 7-part series, including talking to a prisoner because we had Marion and Menard prison in that area. And as a student, we used to go into with one of the faculty allowed to go into the prisons and as speakers. So I was able to do that a couple of times. Well, that was the first time I won I did that series, and we won the second place UPI, United Press International Award.
Wow.
So that was really like a little, just going. So I had the bug then,
Yeah.
that I really bitten. And then I did a show called Dimension, and I also created another show, Out and About. So I was to go out fishing and do those kind of stories out and about Illinois, which I knew nothing about fishing coming from there, except with my grandfather as a little kid, about 5 years old.
Right.
But I went out and did all that stuff, but I was always had this curiosity. So I did that. And from there, my father actually, I missed a part of the story. My father was ill when I went to graduate school. And I wouldn't have gone if I had known how ill he was.
Yeah.
And he passed 2 weeks after I got to graduate school.
Oh my gosh.
And for some
I'm
reason,
sorry.
and I don't know, Bill Shipley, he used to do these commercials. You Chase Manhattan, and he would take off his glasses. You have a friend at Chase Manhattan. Well, he was one of my professors. I went and I was telling him, I had to go home and et cetera. And for some reason I said to him, I'm going to be Dr. Ziegler. I have no idea where it came from. Spiritually, intuitively, or whatever. I just don't know why I said that. I came home from my father's funeral and finished like my master's program, as I said, in about a year and a semester, overlapped my doctoral program because I finished that in 2 years. And I went on and became Dr. Ziegler in my dissertation. Then I went into technology because, see, my dissertation was the second in the country on technology and education. But see, to me, everything on a computer was like everything started on a television set.
Yeah.
So it was very easy for me to sort of put all this stuff together as it relates to packaging information.
Right.
So, I went from that, but I had so much in radio and television that I didn't have any problems looking for jobs. I went to my first job for a year, but my department head at SIU went to the University of Tennessee, and as soon as he got there, stole me. And I went up there and again created new shows, new programs, and all of that. And that has a lot to do with how I grew up and this musical background, and again with my brother-in-law and all that exposure early, which has me where I am now, circling back and telling that story and threading the needle and sewing, knitting everything all the way through.
Wow, what a story. That's amazing. So, you mind if I share something with you?
Okay, go ahead.
So, and this is a long time ago, this was 35 years ago. I was on the fundraising committee for Special Olympics out here.
Oh, okay.
And they had a bachelor auction as a fundraiser.
Oh, okay.
And they had 33 bachelors.
Okay.
And I was number 32. Number 33 was John Carney, the place kicker for the San Diego Chargers, who then went on to be the place kicker for the New Orleans Saints. And he and I sat and watched these 31 men get auctioned off on stage, right? And these women, apparently, as the alcohol flowed, got more and more aggressive, and the whole thing, right? And we got a little nervous sitting in the back, I'll be honest with you. We drank a lot of champagne that night.
Right.
And I don't remember being on stage much. I do remember a few things, but the lady that bought me,
Okay.
that had the highest offer, the highest bid, was a graduate of Southern Illinois at Carbondale.
Wow.
And you're literally the only other person in the world that I've met that's a graduate of Southern Illinois at Carbondale. And I'm like, wow, right?
What else are we having? I was an Ebony Bachelorette. While I was on my first job.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, you said that you drank a lot. That was scary. I worked with the associate editor
Mm-hmm.
of Ebony magazine who decided that I should be this bachelorette. So they, all game, but that was one of the scariest things that happened in my life. I actually had people, because it said I was professor and where I work, what university, showing up at the university. I mean, like one person, supposedly an airline captain, you could tell that the uniform was false, the wings were false. I must have got about 50 letters from prisoners,
Wow.
calls all over. I mean, to this day, I have a private number.
Wow.
All of that thing. I mean, for about 6 months, I was hiding.
Wow.
That is,
Wow.
brave soul to do that.
I'll tell
Wow.
you, I had one
Saluki,
lady.
leave it to those Salukis.
So one lady that didn't end up buying me and didn't end up with the winning thing. She was a widow and she had inherited 33 Baskin Robbins locations here. She was worth a lot of money and 6 foot blonde. And she told me, "You're mine. I'm buying you. You're mine." Right. And she went all the way to the last bid. But this graduate she was a controller of a company here, but she was a graduate of Southern Illinois at Carbondale.
Yeah, well, that's where I got my master's and PhD, and I went on and had a great career at the University of Tennessee. I was on television there, the Tennessee Report, and we were getting a 5 rating. I was the only woman. I was actually invited as a guest during the Clinton administration, and then the guys asked me to join the show. I was the only woman, and the governor, everybody was into the show. In fact, one of my guys, Ron McMahon, who was a big friend of the governor, and Warren Gooch, he was a friend of Gore. So we had a mixed Republican, Democrat, and they would come in with dirt, envelopes that somebody's passed. I didn't have any of those things, so I had to just use my wit.
Right.
But that was, great. I was on the athletic board, so I was there during the Patten years. So I went to all the games. Pat Summit was very close to my heart. I recruited with her, and went to all the games and stuff. And I'm in their Hall of Fame. I'm the only African American ever elected president of the Faculty Senate, which I'm not proud of because I'm still the one and only, and it's 2025, and that
Right.
was back in 1994.
Right.
So, all of those things that come about, all the things you do. But I've had, and then when I came to Florida A&M, which I was only coming down for an endowed chair for a year. And I said, well, they bought me because they let me write my own job description. So I started the technology, distance learning, put the television station on the air, and, went on and had a great career. And then I started doing a lot of international stuff, presented at Oxford and Cambridge and stuff like that. And you already know, in 2008, I was knighted by the Sovereign Order of the Knights of Justice. So I'm a dame, which is why I'm called Lady. And, so I retired, so I'm Professor Emerita, but I have my Z creators, so I still do consulting, I still do production. During the pandemic, I found my music again and wrote 3 songs. In fact, I just ordered another music lab because I want to kind of bring that back. I'm getting a little bit bored, so I got to make something happen.
We can't have that. We can't have that. Not in your
And,
life. There's no boredom in your life.
right. Well, I really want this book to become a film, so that's a whole other thing. And I'm glad that you're a fan.
No, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this amazing book that you wrote called Midnight Train from Georgia. Right. The name of the Gladys Knight The Pips song is Midnight Train to Georgia. Right.
But they left Georgia, so I played on the words.
I'm with you. And this is from Georgia. Right. We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. And we're back. And before the break, we were talking about your life and the fact that you're a PhD. You spent time in Tennessee, at University of Tennessee. You got a chance to get to know Pat Summitt. Was she as amazing as she sounded like she was?
More than that. And not only that, she was a great cook.
Oh, really?
I mean, she cooked soul food.
Yeah.
I mean, she would have us over her house. And I remember we had a board of trustees meeting when I was faculty senate president. And I had messed up my leg or something. So I was on crutches. And the trustees, they were just like, they were amazed that Pat was serving me and bringing me stuff. But we were close.
Yeah.
You know, and I still miss her so much. I help her get Tanya Edwards, Lisa Harrison, and Tamika Holslaw, which was from New York. So recruiting her grandmother lived in the same project when I was a little girl where we lived. So we were able, you know, to talk. But she was just a wonder, even with those piercing eyes that go through you.
Love those.
Heart.
Yeah.
Part was so wonderful,
Yeah.
so beautiful. I miss her. I think about her all the time. I'm in my 46th birthday, and she had me a 46 Lady Vols t-shirt made up.
Oh, sweet.
Made me a little thing at his house. I was, you know, very. People can't even imagine that I ever left the University of Tennessee because they, you know, it was just a wonderful experience for me. But when I'm a builder too, so I like to build things from the ground up. So somebody tell you to write your own job description, and you can then I could go from radio and television and take my other degree of technology and bring that in my life too. It was an opportunity I couldn't, you know, just pass up.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Can we talk about the book for a second?
Yes.
So
please.
I've shared with you that I'm a huge Gladys Knight and the Pips fan. I love 70s rock. I listen to XM 70s on 7, and I just love them. And Midnight Train to Georgia is one of my favorite songs ever. And I actually listened to it before our interview today. More preparation than anything else, but I listened to it because I really wanted to, and it was like, you know, so this is an unbelievably amazing story, and we love stories here.
Right.
They end up let me go back. So you end up writing a book about these families that met in a church. They went to church together, and they were in choir, right? And they figured out
They were related. Yeah.
Yeah, they figured out that the kids can sing.
Right.
They were little, it sounds like, when they discovered this, right?
It was Bubba's 10th birthday party.
Yeah.
And it came about as a result of they had the party, and their friend Garfield down the street had the little record player.
Yeah.
You know, that just to have with the turntable. And Garfield had to go home early. So they were left without any music. But people don't know that the original Pips were Gladys Knight, her sister Brenda Knight, her brother Merrill Bubba Knight, my brother-in-law William Guest, and his sister Eleanor Guest. That was the original group. So they started singing together. The parents, and you'll hear me say Mama Knight and my Marguerite, because they called my mother Mama Ziegler. They heard them singing, and they said, wow, these kids sound good together. So they decided that they would form a group. Now, they had a cousin named Pip.
Yeah.
So that's where the name came from, because Pip was like their little road manager taking them around to the little clubs and the little parties to sing in and to sing in the church. The parents, they sang in the adult choir, and the children sang in the children's choir. They got very, very popular riding around all the way from that time through junior high school up until starting high school. And then by that time, you know, they were doing a lot in the summertime, but they were still singing various gigs around. And there was a gentleman there who told them, come on over and test some of this recording equipment. Okay, so they're thinking that they're just going to see what they sound like. Well, he put the record out, okay, with them singing that they had no idea. My brother was actually walking down the street one day and passed by a record shop, and people may not know record shops back in the day, they used to be playing that music loud on the sidewalks.
It brought people in, yeah.
Right, and he heard their song on the radio, calls Bubba, and Bubba said, yes, I know, I just heard it. Well, that's how this started. And they're trying to figure out, how can this guy, you know, how can they just put out my record? Well, it got so far that it got all the way up to New York to Bobby Robinson. Bobby Robinson, who was, you know, a music manager and producer at that time, got in touch with a DJ in Georgia called Patten, and said, could you get in touch? Got in touch with them to call. So he talked to the parents about them coming to New York. This is how the group became known as Gladys Knight and the Pips, because they were the Pips. They put out the song as the Pips. Well, they came up to New York, and Bobby Robinson convinced the parents, you know, that it was okay. He would take care of them. He wants to record them. So he re-recorded that song. That was the Every Beat of My Heart. But to distinguish between the first and the second song, he called the second one Gladys Knight and the Pips, because they all were lead singers. All of them sang lead, because even when Gladys went away to have her children, the guys sang by themselves, you know, taking various parts. They recorded a couple of songs. So they get up again to New York, and by that time they bring in another friend, Langston, because there used to be 4 Pips. So things are changing now. Gladys' sister, Brenda, she decides she doesn't want to sing. She wants to, you know, have a family and stuff. Gladys, she was married to the saxophone player, Jimmy Newman. She decided that I'm going to go back. They have little Jimmy first. Then she takes a break. So the guys, you know, start singing by themselves. Well, in the meantime, my brother-in-law, he meets my sister. My mother knew Bobby Robinson. Bobby Robinson invites my mother and my sister and brother. Remember, they're 1 year apart. I'm much younger than them, so I couldn't go to the studio. So that's how my sister and brother-in-law met. She was 15. So he was like 17, and they meet and they start talking. Well, time moves on a little bit, and later on, my brother-in-law meets Margarita Mays, who was Marguerite Mays' granddaughter. Marguerite Mays is, for your audience, is the former wife of the renowned baseball player Willie Mays. And she had previously been married years before to one of the Ink Spots, who was another group, singing group. So Marguerite Mays meets the guys, you know, and says, look, y'all are wonderful. You all are talented. and says, but you all will be much greater if you get Gladys
Mhm.
back. So, because I'll just back up a bit, Bobby Robinson, just like the people in Atlanta, ripped them off. So even though they got a chance to do the Apollo, stay at the Hotel Teresa, all that stuff, when it came to money, they would say the royalties, well, those suits you have on and those hotels and stuff. So they didn't get paid what they're supposed to get paid.
Mm.
So they were going to go back home until they met Marguerite Mays.
Right.
Okay, so Marguerite Mays basically moves them out of Harlem, moves them to Long Island. Okay, she had several cars, gave them a car, told them you all have to go out, you have to be sharp, you know, don't get in any trouble. She introduces them to Charlie Atkins. She also makes the call to Gladys and convince Gladys to come back to New York. And the background story is important, as you will see in a moment. Charlie Atkins used to be a famous tap dancer with Honey Coles. They were Coles and Atkins. They were famous tap dancers in the
Mhm.
40s and 50s. Honey Cole was also, part of the Apollo and one of the owners
Mhm.
later on. She introduces them to Charlie Atkins because she wants Charlie Atkins to turn them into a polished act.
Yeah.
That's chapter 5 in the book called Polishing Up Their Act.
Right.
He takes a tin can and just taps beats. That's how he started teaching them how to dance.
Mm.
That's where the precision of the Pips dance steps come from, the genius of Charlie Atkins.
Wow.
So he taught them, because he was part of the group, the Copacetic. So he
Mhm.
taught them the dance. Well, Marguerite Mays takes them to a certain point in their career, and they get the the attention of Barry Gordy,
Mhm.
because they're out there competing with his groups. So Barry then talks them into going to Motown. Gladys never wanted to go to Motown,
Oh, really?
but they did everything as a group, the four of them. They voted, so the best votes win.
Mhm.
She thought that she would get lost. You had the Supremes, the Marvelettes, the Shirelles, all the female groups.
Mhm.
So she thought that she was going to get lost in the sauce. Of course, history, that did not happen.
Mhm.
They went to Motown, but one of the things with Motown, because Barry Gordy wanted Charlie Atkins too. Okay, but Charlie Atkins says, yeah, I'll come and teach your other groups, but I am going to be working solely, you know, with Gladys Knight and the Pips also,
Mhm.
because this is where we started. So they not only polished up Gladys Knight and the Pips, he polished up some of Motown's act. But
Wow.
Barry had this whole cultural revolution. I mean, the women went to like charm school, they learned how to walk, talk, all of those different things. So he created that Motown culture
Mhm.
of class, excellence, all of that. I was just in Detroit 2 weeks ago, and it's so funny because I call my niece and nephew, I call them all the pipettes and the ones that come after that. But even the Motown grandchildren, we were at um, Catherine Sheffield, who wrote the foreword, who was one of the Marvelettes. Her one of her daughters still gives the family and friends picnic
Mhm.
at her house, and her house was across the street. So I got a chance to go up to that. They've been knowing me since I was, 11 years old. I
Yeah.
lived the story because when my sister and brother-in-law met, I was 11. So I've lived this story.
Wow.
And, he called me Little Di. So they all have little nicknames for me. But that whole, Motown environment and the Motown picnics of bringing all the groups together, and they're still all together. And then I went out with my niece and nephews, and we were at this house music party. And then my niece says, "Oh, this is the son of one of the Four Tops, and that. So they're all still together in their lives. We went on a cruise, and the Motown group, who's been singing on that cruise 30-something years, singing all of those songs. It was just wonderful. And
I bet it was.
my brother-in-law and all of that. So we had such a good time. And, again, from Motown, where I heard it through the grapevine and all of those hits and the Motown reviews, while the Motown reviews were going on, Gladys Knight and the Pips were also still doing their thing. Sometimes they were part of the reviews, sometimes they were doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Which then, of course, brought them to Buddha Records.
Oh.
Neil Bogart, Cecil Hollinsberg, all of them. And they gave them, because Barry Gordon would not give them the contract or the money that they wanted at that time. They got to, by this time, they are hot. They're the iconic group. They're performing all over the world. I mean, I tell people, like, as a little girl, I'm riding around in limousines. We're staying at the Waldorf, and all of that. It was, that was just sort of a natural life. And, going back and forth to Detroit, because they got married in 65 and they moved to Detroit in 66. And so I'm still, young, and again, but I've grown up with them, and they also know that I have a little talent for singing disco bells and all that stuff that I talked about earlier. So all of that stuff was going on, in the 70s in between. So they go to Buddha, and then everything explodes. Midnight Train to Georgia. I mean, then that's when they started winning the American Music Awards, the Grammy Awards, and that really led to their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in '89. And to think about that now, how early they were inducted, because Dionne Warwick was just inducted about a year or two ago, which is not fair.
Right.
But, it just says, wow, they got inducted so early. And a lot of the people who came up with them have neither been or they're just being inducted, which, at that time, we're just taking, bows and clapping. We have no idea what the impact of all of this is.
Yeah.
So, again, they went on and on until, which I really, hated that the group broke up, but they were together 37 years.
Wow.
And that's not like we would love for everything to last forever, but it doesn't. And after they broke up, of course, Edward Patten, he got ill, but he was still alive. And get the date straight, 96 with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 89, they broke up. But he was able to, although he was a walker, he was still alive, because I was with his wife and his family a couple of weeks ago in Detroit too, because he was like a father to me. I mean, he was telling my mother, well, he was trying to adopt me. My mother said, you can't adopt my child. But they, from I was 11 years old, they kind of took me everywhere with them, especially Edward and my brother-in-law. We call him Babe Bruh. So from there, Edward, they had their Patten and Guest productions, and they'll say all of them kind of wanted to do their own thing, because in the late 80s, they were really signed to three separate labels. Gladys was signed to Columbia, Gladys Knight and the Pips were signed to Buddha, and the Pips were signed to Casablanca. So they were signed. I mean, that was incredible. So it was music coming from everywhere. So, after the breakup, the Patten and Guest Productions, which became Crew Records with him and Edward, he was doing music really until his death.
Hmm.
But the stories, in between, because it's a coming of age story
Oh,
where
absolutely.
kids had a dream and they dreamed big and they acted on it. And some of the things are so funny what happened, but so genuine. But me as a journalist, although I lived the story, probably for maybe 20,000 from the turn of the century, I just decided that whenever it's with my brother-in-law, I just start videotaping, and I kept video and video until I had so many different tapes, and again, so many different versions of the
Hmm.
story, because he was such a storyteller and
Yeah.
so funny. So, the biggest challenge for me, which took me a while to do, was to go through all of that, find the best of the best, and craft this book together. And I'm so happy because it's won 3 book awards already. It
Yeah.
came out last year, but it's won 3, just won a recent one in May. So the one thing is I know it is a good story, but I know, just as the type of writer I am, because I
Mhm.
came out of broadcast, it's a visual story.
Mhm.
So as I said, that I'm really, really hoping to spark some interest in a movie or documentary or something, because it's a great story. And I think their story deserves to be told just as much as the Jackson Five, the Temptations, and all of them. And I looked at all of those. There are elements the same, but as I say about this group was also more not only about the harmony of voices, but the harmony of spirit.
Yeah.
And one thing my brother-in-law wanted was his life to be lessons learned, and to teach about this business, and to teach others not to make the same mistakes
Mhm.
that they made on the path, or that he made.
Yeah.
And to have that, to make this life have some meaning. And there's a lot of meaning in there. There's a lot of wisdom in the story.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. The thing that I love the most is how organic it is. Everybody met in this church and they were singing in choir and they sort of discovered each other, right?
Right.
And
And even though they were related, but
yeah,
have
yeah.
cousins and
And
stuff. You don't
it's like,
always know.
wow, look at how good they are, right? And then they end up getting together and this whole thing blossoms into this group. I didn't know about the I didn't know about the recording that happened where the guy, released the record without their knowledge and without their consent. I mean, that's like really awful.
Well,
Um,
back in the day, especially 50s and 60s, with a lot of these groups coming up. I don't know if you've seen Sunday's Best yet, the Ed Sullivan story,
I haven't.
because it's on Netflix. It
Okay.
just came out a couple of weeks, but it talks about all of that. But Gladys Knight and the Pips are in there
Uh,
because they were one of the first groups to appear on the Ed Sullivan show.
pardon me. Sorry.
They were one of the first groups, so they're in there. While there's a little section in the back at the end of the story about
Mhm.
Motown, but they're in that documentary early. But it
Yeah.
talks about the crossover from the R&B to pop music, and how all of that happened. And I mean, the Beatles are in there too, but
Mhm.
he really, really spends time talking about what he was told not to do,
Mhm.
like the Billie Holidays, even with the boxers and stuff, not to shake hands and stuff like that. And he defied all of that.
Yeah.
And he was so instrumental in crossing this music over from R&B to pop, and pop lovers to R&B, that was a great part of the legacy, because when they ended up, even with that Motown sound, but by the time they got to Buddha, they had crossed all the way over
Yeah.
into pop music. While they'll always be known as soul,
Mhm.
but they're so much more than that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
their arrangements, soul, class, pop, even some jazzy stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, that was, I mean, just to me, the defining period of music.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
agree with that. And
that
I love how talented all of them were. I mean, there was some real depth there. You know,
Yes,
it wasn't they were just, you know, that she was the lead singer and they were just backing her up. They all had the chops.
they
You know?
all had the chops, and that's what I tell them. And see, their background was as important as the melody.
Yeah.
Because when people sing the Pips song, they sing Gladys Knight and the Pips, they sing her part, they sing their part.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you're right. They all were multi-talented,
Yeah.
you know, could sing and dance, could perform, could, you know, tell stories and everything. Just a class act.
Mhm.
And it's not because it's my family, it's because of what it is. I
Yeah.
witnessed, you know, all of that coming up and know the impact, you know, just on everything, the impact on not only our socialization, but our politics, our
Mhm.
businesses, all of those things were, you know, a lot to do with the music. I remember when I was in South Africa and I was presenting, and FW de Klerk was the main speaker.
Mhm.
And I'd been over there a week and I was really bothered by all the separation.
Mhm.
And I was really into the music. But that night, and you know, we were guest institutions from all over the world.
Mm.
And but there was a particular group at that time called Mendoza,
Mhm.
because I mean, when I was with the white South Africans, the blacks wouldn't talk to me when I was with the black. And it was driving me nuts. I'm a
Mhm.
New Yorker. You know, where I say we learned socialization riding the subway. So, but
Right.
that
The melting pot. Thank you very much. Yeah,
night,
right.
that night, Mendoza came on and everybody got on the floor, including the clerk. In
Mm.
fact, I have a colleague here from Florida State who tells people I danced with 200 people that night because I was so excited. I danced all over that whole floor
Mhm.
with everybody. Again, you know, that music
Mhm.
defining the ages. And that was so powerful, the impact. And you know, and I wish we had that kind of harmony now.
Well, it's amazing how it
It's
brings
still
everybody
powerful.
together,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Like how unifying it is, because it's not, you know, all that stuff, all that class warfare, all that stuff goes away. It just like
right,
disappears, right? And everybody's just a fan and they're enjoying it and they're singing along and they're dancing and they're just having a good time, you know? I mean,
right.
it's that's the thing that's the thing that I love about 70s music is it's post, you know, during and post Vietnam, right? When we were really divided as a country
Right.
and that music helped to bring us back together, right? And I was a kid when it was happening. I didn't realize exactly what it was that I was watching. Later on, obviously in life I figured it out, you know. But it was one of those things where music has this powerful and I you know, full disclosure, I sang in a choir
Okay,
in
me too.
school, right? And I sang in a, you know, and it was and we competed and all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool. Music's always been a big part of my life. And I think it's because I played music when I was a kid and because I was in choir and all that, that sort of musical upbringing that like I used to do recitals with piano recitals and you know, violin recitals and all that kind of stuff. And I remember doing all that, and I remember just loving music and you know, when you come across somebody like the Pips, right? When you come across somebody who has that just depth of talent like that, just it resonates with you, and it's something that reaches you, right? Like Barry Gordy, a lot of people don't appreciate what he did.
Right.
And what he did, there's all kinds of things about how he exploited people and all this kind of stuff. And I get all that. Okay. I get it.
But
But
Hitsville USA
there was
was
also a genius there, right? And there was also kind of like what you were talking about. There was a lot of almost like with Marguerite Mays, right? There was this sacrifice. There was this look, I'm going to help you. I have some means and I'm going to help you get to where you want to be, right? Now you're going to have to, you know, hold the straight and narrow and not get in trouble and all that kind of thing, right? It was a standard and it was it was an opportunity. It sounds like it was a lot like the Wild Wild West, the music, industry for those, couple of decades. But I just absolutely love what was delivered, what it was that we get to listen to even today. And it takes you back, and it's a really emotional experience for me. So can I ask you something about the book?
Mhm.
There are people that are listening to this that are thinking about writing a book and they haven't yet. What was it that made you decide to take the step to do this? And what's the single most important thing you learned writing the book?
Well, I'm a journalist,
Yeah.
so I've written academic books. I've written over, 50 or 60 articles published. So, it's a process for me.
This was
But
different though, right?
it was different. Yeah, it was more, and what made it even challenging because it was family.
Yeah.
I had to get it right. I
Your
was going,
heart. Yeah.
yeah. So, and because of the character of my brother-in-law and all the things that he taught us, that he
Mhm.
taught me as a little girl by example. Our family is still very, very close. I look at his sons, they're so much like their father, even crossing their leg and sitting around. And one of them says, "This is dad's side on this side, and this is my side." One looks so much like him. But just bringing that, having those conversations, teaching us about family, sitting
Mhm.
around, talking and telling those stories. Those stories are so rich
Yeah.
that he told, to talk about Mama Tilly and Uncle on the back porch when he was a little boy playing music. He'll say that he had listened to music from in the womb. So he had to come out singing and dancing because his grandmother taught him as a little boy to sing harmony in the kitchen while she was cooking. So, and then their family, all the community would come and listen to them jam on the back porch. So, just those stories, coming up, it's like my family, and that's why it was very easy for our families to get
Mhm.
along. My family used to wake us up in the middle of the night to dance.
Mhm.
you know, we danced and sang and had that same love of music. So when we all came together, we were just one family.
Yeah.
And then, to share stories, and then, our families come together. I've spent as much time in Atlanta when I was a little girl. When his father died, my mother let my sister and me go to that funeral. And then my Margaret, my mother, and Mama Knight, they used to pick out some of Gladys' clothes. We just did all of that stuff together and just those stories. And, I think that it was those simple times, but it's those simple times and those simple things that are so special and so genuine that last forever.
Yeah.
So I wanted the impact. He poured so much into us. I wanted to share that with the world because it's not only the talent. That's why I said it's more than the harmony of voices, the harmony of spirit,
Yeah.
but all of the other messages in there and stories. And, it's about love and family and faith and harmony and the entertainment industry, all of the things that young people and all ages, would just appreciate.
Mhm.
And it's because it's not only entertainment, it's also lessons learned.
Yeah. So the book is Midnight Train from Georgia, and people can get it. Where can people get the book?
Amazon,
Okay.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or wherever you get your books. And if they don't have it, tell them to get it because they're
That's
missing.
right. That's right. They're missing out. So you want to turn this into a movie. So if anybody's listening to this, we want connections. We want to get this thing made into a film, right?
That's right. That's right. And it's an easy read. And all the feedback I get from it is that, wow, this is so visual. It should be a movie. And I'm even up for Author of the Year. I'm going to be in Hollywood in October. I'm a finalist with the International Impact Book Award. So I'm hoping that that becomes the fourth. And while I'm out there in Hollywood, it doesn't even have to be Hollywood. They make movies anywhere now.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So anyone out there listening, if you want to, hey, it's going to be a hit. Already it's won 3 awards. So I know it's a good story, and it's going to be an excellent film.
I love it. Lady Dhyana Ziegler, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been amazing, absolutely amazing. And I knew it would be. I was so excited for this. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com, and the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.